So this is awkward. I've prided myself on being the biggest bearer of bad news for leftists on the internet. Some would say I've dedicated my entire life to the craft, to this exact purpose, to crap on the left's political dreams, hopes, and aspirations on a daily basis. And for the most part, I think I've done a pretty good job at it, but I guess I no longer own the title. I've made some pretty brutal takedown videos, but I think it all pales in comparison to what I just witnessed, to what I was just presented with. And what's crazy is that this time it comes from the source. Usually you expect leftist detractors to come out with the cold, hard facts, bursting the leftist blue no matter who bubble. This time it comes directly from CNN, the Clinton News Network, the most trusted name in news.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Yep, you heard it right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but CNN just released a poll, just released an entire analysis segment on a widespread, wide-ranging poll, which has delivered some of the most brutal reality check news in one big chunk that leftists are now sitting there forced to swallow. After celebrating last week that this election was over and Joe Biden had taken the reins, it seems as though it didn't last very long, pretty much just as predicted. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so it's absolutely brutal, and it gets even worse when RFK Jr. is put into the mix. We had two polls showing that RFK Jr. is spiking in the polls, taking support away from Donald Trump. But that didn't last too long. It seems as though it was yet again another blip on the radar, two push polls, two cruddy leftist polls, one from NPC News, the other from NPR Marist, both of them showing a sudden surge in RFK Jr. support, supposedly to the benefit of Joe Biden, complete outlier from the trends that we've seen over the last couple of months. Well, I told you it wasn't going to last, and here we go. CNN just released this poll.
Good morning, and welcome to Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju, and we begin with breaking news. A new CNN national poll released for the first time here on Inside Politics Sunday reveals the challenges President Biden faces as he asks voters for a second term, even as former President Trump has been stuck in a New York courtroom fending off criminal charges and with 3 other criminal cases looming. Our new poll, which was conducted by SSRS, finds Trump is leading Biden, who has ample work to do with his base and with independent voters who are breaking to his GOP rival. In a head-to-head race, 49% of voters say they'd pick Trump for president, compared to 43% for Biden. That's a 9-point Trump advantage with independent voters. And add in third-party candidates, and Trump's lead jumps even more. He has 42% to Biden's 33%, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets 16% of the vote. Our poll also underscores the challenges of incumbency, and that voters, 4 years later, have a better view of Trump's presidency compared to Biden's. 55% say Trump's time in office was a success, with only 39% saying the same about Biden's presidency. And look at party breakdown, more people are calling Trump's presidency a success than in January of 2021. And that was in the wake of the Capitol attack by a mob of Trump supporters. The number of independents there going up by 7%. Now, Biden's team believes the numbers will change when voters begin to zero in more on the two candidates.
In a head-to-head Trump versus Biden matchup, Trump leads by 6 at 49 to 43%. That's significant enough, right? I mean, that's enough to have leftists absolutely panicking, throwing a fit, but it gets even worse. And again, this is nationally. Once again, when RFK Jr. is introduced in the mix, supposedly he maintains this huge surge in support, pulling 16% of the vote, but pulling most of that support away from Joe Biden, giving Donald Trump a +9 in a 5-way race again nationally. And the analysis at CNN, well, let's just say it's been brutal. I think this one question is probably the most important. General opinion of presidency. 55% of respondents believe that Donald Trump was successful during his first term, at 44% finding it a failure. That's a net 11 positive spread. Well, when it comes to Joe, he's underwater by 22 points. At 39% approval. This falls right in line with his general approval rating. I just don't see how a president with such incredibly low numbers, with historically low numbers, can get across the finish line here without, let's just call it, creative help. According to the New York Post, Joe Biden is supposedly the least popular president in 70 years, below Nixon and even Jimmy Carter. Joe Biden is the least popular commander-in-chief at this point in his presidency in the last 70 years, below Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, according to a blistering new poll, imperiling his chances of re-election. Biden, 81, notched a dismal 38.7% job approval rating for the first quarter of 2024. And now the venerable Gallup poll found in a survey released on Friday that Joe Biden is 3 points lower than that of one-term president George H.W. Bush at the same time or the same point in his presidency. With about 6 months remaining before Election Day, Biden stands in a weaker position than any prior incumbent. He is literally the worst president in modern American history according to the data, and it just keeps on getting worse. I'm seeing a lot of data suggesting that Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, these states are going to be tight races. Joe Biden's still pulling a chunk of support, he's still got his base, but I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know if that base really exists or if that base is really going to show up. That's the really important thing. Pollsters are giving people calls and asking who you're going to vote for, and I'm sure there's a lot of people saying, I don't know, Joe Biden. But the question is, are those people going to show up? Are the low propensity voters going to make their voices heard? Are they going to show up for Sleepy Creepy Joe, the worst president in modern American history? I'm not so sure. But as we know, when it comes to the Trump camp, even Ben Shapiro, of all people, is claiming that he'd crawl over glass in order to vote for Trump. I keep playing that clip, we won't play it again, but I think it's important to point out, I don't think anybody would even crawl over a pack of Legos to go vote for Sleepy Joe. I think enthusiasm is the name of the game here. Hypothetically, Biden's competitive, but on Election Day, or as we get closer to Election Day, as people realize, these are the choices, it's Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or RFK Jr., I think Trump is going to look more and more like the right pick. People are going to continue to ask themselves this exact question: which candidate lines up with me? Well, the polling data is suggesting that Donald Trump lines up with voters on most issues. It's not Scranton middle-class Joe Biden. People are going to ask themselves, who was more successful? Clearly, the answer is Trump, and they're going to ask themselves, were they better off under Trump's leadership or under Joe's? And again, it's the same answer. It's essentially the same question. That's what it's going to boil down to. That, and of course, enthusiasm, and whether or not these trends will persist. If we keep seeing polls that show in the crosstabs that Donald Trump is pulling 36% of the black vote and nearly 50% of the Hispanic vote, there's no way Joe Biden can win. If we keep seeing independents splitting the way they are for Trump, how can Joe Biden win? I just don't get how it could happen. If we keep seeing unions shifting over and ditching the Democrat Party, with a recent New York union member stating at a 3-to-1 ratio his members were supporting Donald Trump in the next election, and that's a poll of over 9,000 union workers. If that happens, and if that trend continues and more people start jumping on that bandwagon, I don't see how Joe Biden comes back from this. And of course, on top of all of it, if RFK Jr. is president on the ballot, I don't see how he pulls support away from Donald Trump somehow to the benefit of Joe Biden. RFK Jr. is a leftist. He says a lot of great things, but fundamentally he's a Democrat. He is a far leftist on some issues. He's going to appeal to disenfranchised left-wing voters who are not only concerned with Joe Biden's health and his age, but also view the DNC as increasingly more and more corrupt, more and more controlled by the puppet masters. They friggin' canceled primaries, simply electing Joe Biden as their nominee, not even allowing a Kennedy of all people to put his name in the race. RFK Jr. is going to pull disenfranchised Democrat voters. Meanwhile, the Trump train is strong. You might even argue stronger than ever. People are going to show up. They're going to vote early. And I'm not so sure Joe Biden's going to get that same treatment. Also, keep in mind, Trump is possibly up nationally by 9 points. 9. And we're more than 6 months away from Election Day. Usually, early polling data would have Joe Biden up by 10 to 15 points, literally. Especially in the Quinnipiac, YouGov, NPR Marist polls. But they have them either tied or losing. And of course, mostly losing in the most important battleground states. I think a full-on panic, major alarm bells are going on at the DNC headquarters. This CNN poll was absolutely brutal. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.